Alright, welcome back to another video. Earlier this week, a couple days ago, Claudia Tenney was seated in New York's 22nd Congressional District, which basically brings this 2020 election to a close. I know it's been several months, but I kind of wanted to do just one more video to summarize and to reflect. So, Joe Biden won this election. He won 51.3% of the popular vote to Trump's 46.8%. He won 306 to 232 in the Electoral College. He flipped the states of Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. In the states of Wisconsin, Arizona, and Georgia, he won by less than 25,000 votes. He pulled off a somewhat strong victory in the state of Michigan. He held on in the state of Minnesota, but there were also letdowns in Florida, where Trump did better than he did 4 years ago, in Ohio, where he did about the same, and in Iowa, where he did about the same, and in Texas, where it was 3 points closer, but 6% is nothing to be excited about. Democrats lost by over 500,000 votes, so they weren't too happy about Texas. But this was a really tumultuous election, and kind of knowing what we know now about Trump inciting the armed insurrection on the Capitol, and the impeachment and everything that's been said since, it's kind of hard to reflect on the election without taking all that into account, but I'm going to try and do the best I can. Kind of key themes in this election. Biden wanted to rebuild the blue wall, and he did. I still think there's a lot of cracks in that blue wall, but he rebuilt it for the time being. It's unclear if a Democrat will have the blue wall in 4 years or if a Republican will have it in 4 years. I am under the belief that elections are not at all about just turnout. They're all about expanding the base and doing better. We can see that in Pennsylvania, where Biden did better in the Philadelphia suburbs and better in some more rural counties. We can see that as well in Michigan, where he did better in some more smaller cities and suburban counties. He did better in Wisconsin, in the Milwaukee suburbs, in Waukesha. He got the Republicans under 60%, which is really, really notable. But then Republicans also did really well in Florida, winning back, nearly winning Miami-Dade County. This is mainly the Cuban vote really showing out for Trump, and Osceola County, which is north of Orlando, the Puerto Rican vote really showing out for Trump. And then Trump really winning the Hispanic vote in the Rio Grande Valley, 40-point shift in Kennedy County. 32 in Brooks, 39 in Jim Hogg, 38, 46, I think there's 55. I mean, that's unheard of, or 55-point shift. And yeah, it's a small county, but these are some big red arrows. At the same time, Biden won Georgia. Georgia was one of the only bright spots for Democrats 4 years ago. The whole country kind of shifted right, and there were these red arrows all across the nation, except in Georgia and around the Atlanta suburbs and across the state. He did better in counties like Gwinnett County, which is suburban Atlanta, Forsyth County. He did better in Paulding and Cobb. He did better in Columbia. He did better across the state. And we also saw that both Raphael Warnock and Jon Ossoff won those elections, kind of just because of the Republican Party's general weakness after the election. If we go to the House, Democrats have it still. They flipped 3 seats. 2 were in North Carolina because of redistricting. Deborah Ross and Kathy Manning won in North Carolina. And then this was kind of expected. Carolyn Bourdeaux lost by, I think, under 500 votes last time, and Georgia has shifted left since then. So Carolyn Bourdeaux and the Democrats won the seat in suburban Atlanta, Georgia 7th. But across the nation, Republicans won back many House seats, and this is the most diverse class of Republicans to enter into the House. You have two Latinos flipping seats in Florida. You have one of the first women, I think the first woman, to represent a congressional district in South Carolina, Nancy Mace, who is a Army veteran. You have Claudia Tenney, who took her seat back, a woman. You have a seat in New York City, Nicole Malliotakis. She is of Cuban descent. You have two female candidates flipping seats in Iowa. Marinette Miller-Meeks only won by 6. Michelle Fischbach, a woman, flipped a seat in Minnesota. Burgess Owens, a former NFL wide receiver, African-American, flipped a seat in Utah. And then in Colorado, David Valadao flipped California's 21st. Mike Garcia held on. He is of Mexican descent. And then both Young Kim and Michelle Steele flipped 2 Orange County districts. They are both women of Korean descent. And also Yvette Harrell, who is of Native American descent, and Stephanie Bice, who I believe is the first Iranian-American woman to be elected to Congress. So a very diverse Republican class that flipped seats. Republicans did flip 15 seats. This kind of adds to the narrative that the country wanted Joe Biden, but they didn't necessarily want to give him all the power. And in the end, they did, because Democrats are the majority in the Senate. It is a very slim majority. Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema throughout the next 2 years, 4 years are going to vote with Republicans a fair amount. We just saw they're saying, no, we want to keep the filibuster, and we don't want to immediately increase the minimum wage to $15. I think both of them said they do want to do that. They just want to do it over the course of a couple years to let the economy adjust. But in the Senate, Democrats flipped 4 seats, 2 in Georgia with Raphael Warnock and Jon Ossoff. Both won pretty slim. Raphael Warnock does have to run again in 2 years. I will talk about that in a Senate video I will soon do. Republicans flipped 1 seat, Doug Jones, no surprise here. Alabama is a very red state. And then Democrats flipped Colorado, not a big surprise. John Hickenlooper is popular. Cory Gardner, a Republican in a blue state. He was also elected in 2014, which was a Republican wave year, and Colorado has moved way to the left since then. And then Mark Kelly, Arizona, which there's actually a lot of Trump Kelly voters, something interesting. But he will also have to run again in 2 years. I'll talk about that race sooner. But Democrats thought they could do a lot better in the Senate. They thought they had shots at South Carolina. Lindsey Graham won by 10. They thought they had shots at Kentucky. Mitch McConnell won by almost 20 points. They thought they had a shot at Maine. Susan Collins was down in every poll 6 months leading up to the election, and she won pretty big. In Iowa, Joni Ernst, solid 6-point win. Democrats thought they could pick this one up. Even in Alaska, Dan Sullivan, Al Gross could maybe unseat him. He was an independent, very independent leaning. He did not win. MJ Hagar did not win in Texas, and Steve Daines held on against the very popular Democratic governor, Steve Bullock. And then this is probably the one that surprised me the most. Even though Cal Cunningham did have kind of a sex scandal, I still thought he would be able to unseat Tom Tillis. He did not. North Carolina, pretty interesting. In the 2020 election, they elected a Democratic governor by a pretty large margin. They voted for Trump, and they elected a Republican senator. Also, there was Kansas, but once Chris Kobach was not going to be the nominee, we kind of knew the Republicans were going to win this one. So that's the Senate. We thought Democrats could do better, and then there were only a couple Democrat seats that Republicans thought they could flip. They thought they had a good shot at Michigan. John James outperformed Donald Trump. I thought John James actually would maybe win. He was kind of the dark horse candidate. I thought maybe he'll win. He did not. He came very close. He's now lost 2 Senate elections, but I have a feeling he might take a stab at running against Gretchen Whitmer in 2 years. Tina Smith, this was a lot closer than I think most Democrats thought, and this is a pretty uncomfortable margin of victory for Democrats in the future. And then New Hampshire, Republicans didn't find a good candidate, so the Democrats won pretty big. I do want to take a look. This is another awesome New York Times thing. This is an extraordinarily detailed map of the 2020 election, down to like voting precincts. And you can't see all the country, but you can see a fair amount of it. Like we can zoom in on, let's just say Madison, Wisconsin. And you can see just how detailed this map gets, with the hundreds of votes, thousands of votes. Really, really detailed map that shows a lot. But what's more surprising actually is you can go to see change from 2016, and it's pretty mixed. A lot of the country got a little bit more Democratic, and a decent amount got a little bit more Republican. Specifically, South Florida, some regions in New Mexico, Arizona, some states that got closer for the Republicans, and, the Northeast got bluer. But this was a really interesting map. Just wanted to mention it. I was maybe going to look at exit polling and compare it. There's not a whole lot to look at. My big takeaway was that with kind of ideology. Moderate split 4 years ago was 52% for the Democrats. This time it was 64%. So moderates are gonna, I think, after this, make up a majority of the electorate. I think they'll get up to like 40%, just because I think more people are gonna stop saying they're liberal or conservative. So the moderate vote really is the future of both parties. And then with Democrats and Republicans, they were kind of, 94%, 5%, 94%, 6%. But with independents, they went 54% for Joe Biden. And just 4 years ago, they went 48% for Trump. And a lot went for probably Gary Johnson. So that was interesting to look at as well. So Democrats did a lot better with independents and with moderates, and that's how they won. Also interesting, 4 years ago, basically 1 in 10 Democrats voted for Trump, which is shocking just to look back and see. Another thing that I wanted to mention was the Hispanic Latino. 4 years ago, it was 65-29. And this time around, I believe, it's 65 but 32. So Republicans did a lot better with the Hispanic demographic. They also, by the way, this was a little bit surprising. 4 years ago, Hillary Clinton won 88% of African Americans, and Joe Biden won 87%. So even with, the Black Lives Matter movement and a African American on the ticket, and, Joe Biden being linked to Barack Obama, Joe Biden did slightly worse with African Americans, and Republicans did 4 points better, which was surprising. So Republicans improved with minorities, but not very much, 3% with Hispanic Latino demographic, as we kind of saw when we looked at Florida, and some other parts of the nation. And Republicans did 4 points better with African American voters. I think the white vote is pretty similar, except Joe Biden did 3 points better with white voters. So that's the exit poll. But really, the story behind this election was the nation wanted a change at president, but they didn't necessarily want to give Joe Biden a kind of mandate. This was definitely a tumultuous election. It'll go down as a historic election. It's the first time a Democrat's really done well in a southern state in a long time. Also, the first time a Democrat's won Arizona in a while. And, this is likely, this could be the last time Donald Trump's on the ballot. There's been speculation maybe he'll run again. He may not be able to because there might be some 14th Amendment stuff. If you don't know about the 14th Amendment stuff with Trump, I recommend you look it up. It's pretty interesting how they're thinking of using a clause that banned Confederate generals from running for Senate in the 1870s to ban Trump for running for president or higher office. So I think this map will be similar in 4 years. I think Nevada's still going to be a swing state, still Arizona, still the Midwest, a lot of swing states, and I think the Sun Belt is going to be full of swing states, full of competitive races. So this kind of just wraps up the 2020 election. A big election, a tumultuous election, and a surprising election. I think I was off by one. I said it was going to be 305, 233. Instead of Georgia, I had Joe Biden winning North Carolina. I was very surprised Joe Biden won Georgia. But this was a big election, tumultuous election, an election I talked about very much, an election that is now in the history books. So in the next few videos, and you might have noticed, I changed my channel name from Inside 2020 to Inside Elections because, 2020 is over. We're going to be looking a little bit at some of the impeachment stuff maybe. I'm going to be doing some 2022 research. There's been a lot of news around the 2022 election. And just as a reminder that they haven't done redistricting yet and it's gotten delayed, so we won't be able to talk about the House races for a while. But that wraps it up with the 2020 election. Joe Biden won the popular vote by 4%. He won the Electoral College by a lot in the modern era. Alright, so that is all for this video, and that is all for my coverage of the 2020 election. Please stay tuned for more.